Have you ever experienced that when you want to do something and you take the steps forward and then all of a sudden something happens and brings you back all the way to the beginning? It's like you want that thing so much that it just keeps running away from you, but then just keep repeating that cycle. Then this video is for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the root cause of that. You can call it imposter syndrome. You can call it, living that same cycle over and over again, and things that I have done in my life to get what it is truly that I want. That way you can get what you want and deserve in your life and stop repeating that cycle over and over again. So let me start with the story. So when I was working a 9-to-5 job and I wanted to start my business, what I wanted to do is, first of all, I had to quit my job, right? So I knew I had to quit it, but before that, I wanted to create the steps, the business plan, have those things lined up before, right? I'm a planner. It's part of my personality. So I developed the idea, right? And I had everything ready, right? But every time that I would go to want to quit my job, right, something would happen. Either I had more work or my boss wasn't available. And as I kept getting closer, right, I had everything ready, but something always tended to happen that didn't allow me to turn in my 2 weeks resignation. It was like, it almost felt like, and I don't know if you ever felt like this before, like if I was stuck, I don't know if you ever seen those glue traps for like the mice, right? I don't use them, but if you've seen those where like you're stuck to this huge glue trap on the wall, you see what it is that you want and you're trying to get it, but for some reason something just pulls you back, right? I felt that, and maybe you felt that too if you're watching this video, right? So what's holding you back? What I want to kind of explain is not just the thing what's holding you back, but really there's a couple steps between it. You consciously you want something, right? Like I wanted to start that business, right? I had the desire. I had done it before, but I was working at a 9-to-5 for steady income. So consciously, I wanted that business, right? I wanted that freedom. Consciously, I wanted that, no ceiling cap of my revenue. Consciously, I knew that's what I wanted. It just represented freedom for me, right? Maybe it does for you too. But there was something holding me back. Hence, it was my job, right? But that glue, it wasn't just my job, right? Because the job I could have turned in 2 weeks, right? Turn in my 2 weeks notice and just quit. It wasn't my job. What it was, and this took me a while, what I'm going to share with you is very important. And if you ever experience self-sabotage or the imposter syndrome or any of that, this is all comes back down to this one thing. It's your self-talk. What your self-talk is, and you probably heard it, is the inner conversation going on between your ears. It's that little, sometimes it's not so little, sometimes it's really loud, that voice that tells you as soon as you get close to something that you really want, that voice starts up, and you might feel it as fear. You might feel it as anger, self-sabotage, or imposter syndrome, but it all comes up from that little or that big voice in your head that's telling you like, what if this happens? You can't do this. What are you going to do with no money, right? And that conversation is a root of us not taking action towards the thing that we want, right? And then it manifests into fear, and then it, freezes. A quick story. I was at a mastermind, a long time ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, when I was still struggling and controlling my inner conversation. And, I was going to speak, right? And it was a small group. I mean, it was probably like maybe a dozen people, and everyone was getting up, introducing themselves, and then, saying like a little pitch, like what we did. And I got up, said my name, and I went catatonic. I froze. I couldn't speak, right? Then I sat down and I said, let me do this again. And I got up 3-4 times. I just kept going catatonic. Like I couldn't speak anymore. Like, this was in a group of friends, but I was just standing up and just saying what I did. And I couldn't understand in the moment, right? But then afterwards, once I actually dove in and really, really learned what was happening, it was that inner conversation, that judging conversation, that inner critic in your head that tells you can't do this, that you start beating yourself up. But I want you to understand that what you're hearing is really not you, right? And if you understand this, or if this is the first time that you heard it, that voice, the inner critic, it has nothing to do with you. That's why it is that you want something, like I wanted to quit my job so I could start my coaching business, but something held me back. It was that voice, right? It's that judging voice. Now, the best way that I have done to be able to start, you can't control the voice. You have to train it. You have to think about it like a wild stallion, like a wild horse, that has never been in captivity. And that horse, what's going to happen if you grab that horse and you just try to catch it? It's going to run away from you, right? It's going to fight. Even if you're able to hold on, you better hold on for dear life, right? Because it's going to kick and it's going to jump, it's going to run, and you're going to get hurt, right? But you cannot control your mind. What you have to do is you really have to start training it, right? This is something that I've done through meditation, through just my self-development, and that's my purpose of this channel, for you to start training your mind, training that voice, so that way you can get what it is that you want. So the very first thing that you want to do to start training that inner conversation, start training your mind, is you have, first of all, is awareness. You have to understand that what you hear, and sometimes it's really subtle, right? It's going to tell you things for you not to do things. Now, of course, you have to be aware of it. That's the step number one. You got to be aware of that conversation is going on in your head. If you're not achieving something that you want in your life, it has nothing to do with, and it has nothing to do that you don't have any money. It doesn't have to do anything with that you don't have the potential, that you don't have the smarts, that you don't have, the opportunities. This is all present for us, for all of us. But what holds us back is this inner conversation, this critic in our head that tells us that we can't do it for whatever reasons, right? It makes up these stories. Now, what you have to understand first is that that's going on. That's not you. It's a very, very powerful lesson that I learned a few years, that you have to actually start thinking about your thoughts, right? Thinking about your thoughts. Because as soon as you create that awareness, is a separation. Now, there's something in psychology that's very important, in cognitive behavioral therapy, where there's actually in that conversation, there's a inner child, there is a critical parent, and there's an adult. All these are formed from our adolescent that become that conversation in our head, right? And you have to understand that inner conversation is based on beliefs of stories of things, right? Like for me, how dare I quit my 9-to-5 job to start a business, right? That there was so much uncertainty. My father never did that, right? It was a belief of mine that you needed a 9-to-5, right, to be secure, to have the security, to have stable income, right? Now, that's where that conversation comes from, is from beliefs. And most of them, they're old beliefs, and most of them, those beliefs aren't even yours, right? So that's that sticky glue that's holding us back, right? That's holding you back from trying to get what it is that you want. So it's the inner conversation. So you're probably thinking, okay, so I'm aware, Juan Carlos, of my inner conversation. What do I do to start changing it? That's great. So next is that you're aware of it. You have to shine a light on it. You have to express it. Remember, it's like the wild stallion. You cannot control that conversation. You cannot control your mind. You have to start training it. Very, very important. This is what I have learned doing Zen meditation. You have to train your mind, train those conversations. That's your goal. So how do you do that? Journaling is one of the most important things that you can start doing. Now, for many, many years, I struggled, but then I learned this kind of hack about journaling, I guess you can say. It's carry your journal everywhere you go. Doesn't matter. Bathroom to the kitchen, you go to the gym. If you see me, you see this journal. It's taken me a while to do this, but for the past few years, everywhere you see me is take the journal, right? So what you want to do is, as soon as you hear that conversation start up, whatever it tells you, start journaling it. Because there's power when you remove it from the conversation and you see it and you write it. Now, I will tell you, it's different for everybody, but when you start journaling what the conversation that's going on in your head, a lot of it's not going to be pleasant. A lot of it's very, for me, in the very beginning, it was very derogatory. It was very nasty to me. And I realized, oh my God, like, I can't believe this is what I'm telling myself, right? I would call myself names. And this was just the inner conversation. Now, once you extract that and you start journaling it, you start seeing it. And then when you can start seeing it is, that's when it starts losing its power, right? Because you're not keeping it inside, right? So once you start understanding that conversation, then you can start begin to change it, right? And now, once you start understanding that conversation and you're writing it down, what you want to ask yourself is, where are these thoughts from, right? Most likely they're from like an old belief, right? You can start, questioning them, right? There's a process that I do. It's like a 4 or 5 step process to start really untangling your thoughts, and that's something that I can include if you guys are interested. But like the very first step of that, again, I'll just share it with you, is once you catch those thoughts, you put them on a journal, right, and you start reading them, and you'll be surprised what they say. Now, don't be hard on yourself. It might not take, for me, it took me a while to start journaling my thoughts and really start seeing them, but it will happen. But you have to be ready with your notebook. So then once you see them and then you start questioning them, right, you have to go see what was the trigger, right? What's that belief? Because those thoughts are based on the belief of some sort of story, right, that's running in the background, your subconscious mind. Because remember, that's really what controls us 95% of the time. Consciously, you want something, but your subconscious mind says, oh, buddy, you can't quit your job, right? Like, how dare you start a business? You have no idea if it's going to work or not, right? It's that uncertainty. So once you have that, you want to look at what triggered it, right? And for me, obviously, it was pretty simple. It was, I want to quit my job, right, and start a business. And then, so that trigger was, then I can dig into the belief of like, okay, wait a minute. Like, I really don't have a good example of people doing this, right? It's possible that it might not work, but what if I can find someone that's done the same thing that I have, right? And maybe I can model them, maybe I can talk to them, right? That'll give me some more evidence that this is it's possible, right? And then that allowed me to somewhat detach from those thoughts, right? And then learn from them, right? Because they're viable. Like the thought was based on an old belief. Now I can create a new belief that, look, I have a business, I have an example of someone that's done this before, right? And then my thoughts start beginning to change because my belief starts changing, right? And then there's a lesson in there. And now I can take the action. Right? Very important. And again, if you follow that process, you can actually start changing your inner self-talk, which is really what's holding us back. Because again, how is it possible that you want something so bad, but things happen, right? Mysteriously happen. That does not allow you. It's that stickiness that's sticking you to the wall, and it's like you can't reach it. So that's the really process that you can do to get what it is that you want, to end that self-sabotage. It is a process, but I hope you, through this channel, that you're able to learn in different ways of really getting more clarity, right? And really start empowering yourself to become free, right? So you can build and achieve the life that you deserve, so that way you have your purpose and you can step into your power. That's my goal. So if you found this information useful, please subscribe, share it, put any comments down below. I'd be curious to see if you ever experienced that, or maybe what are your ways of coping, of changing that self-talk. In one of my next videos, I'll be covering affirmations, why I used affirmations for, 5-6 years, and they did absolutely nothing. But I'll tell you why, and a kind of a little hack on why and how to use affirmations. And why they usually don't work. And there's a kind of little hack in there. So again, thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, share it with friends if you found this helpful. And I appreciate you for watching. Namaste.